Welcome to Stories. Let's Connect by the Speak Good English movement. My name is Jon Gresham and I am a writer here in Singapore. Today I will be reading The Looker. The following day, Chandani's shift started as usual. After a couple of hours when several batches of passengers had been processed, with all flights departing on schedule, the team moved to a different gate and set up their security station in preparation for more people. When Chandani looked up from her monitor, she saw the man in black again. He was lining up, waiting for the gate to open. She pointed him out to Hamid. "Didn't we see him yesterday? That man in the queue with the goatee? He was on a flight to Perth. How come he's back in Singapore so soon?" The man placed his bag on the rollers and walked through the metal detector archway. Chandani saw that the contents of his bag were the same as what she had seen the day before. Hamid asked the man to step onto the mat and hold his arms out. Hamid wafted around him. The wand did not beep and he thanked the man and waved him through the gates. Hamid turned towards Chandani and shrugged. Before the man had a chance to reach the passenger waiting area, Mr. Tuan told the man to stop and motioned for Chandani to review his travel documents. She rose from her chair, walked around the metal tables and asked to see the man's passport and boarding pass. When she drew closer to him, she saw that his small black beard was a different colour, more a dark blue-black with a hint of green. His passport showed a clean-shaven, tidy young man in the photo. She glanced at his face and tried to imagine him without the goatee. He looked reliable, trustworthy, someone you could talk to, someone who'd listen. She thought he was Filipino or Spanish, although his passport said his nationality was Singaporean. Birthplace, Penang, Malaysia. Birth date, 13th of May 1969. His name was Robert Ang. Destination, Paris. Allocated to business class seat 5A. She wanted to gather any information she could about the man, and she returned to her monitor and ran his name and passport details through local Interpol and FBI databases. She waited for something about this man to congeal and stick, but there were no alerts on any of the watch lists. When she returned his travel documents, she made sure her fingers brushed his hand. She felt a gentleness in the touch, like the caress of a drop of warm milk on the skin. The man thanked her, smiled and said, "Let me know when you're ready." He waited a moment for Chandani to reply, and when she said nothing, he turned and walked away towards the airline desk in front of the waiting area. She sat down and continued looking at the objects on her screen, but found it difficult to concentrate. She wanted to call him back, tell him to remove his belt and his shoes and ask him to step through the archway again. She didn't care if people in the queue became frustrated and complained. She wanted to know more about him than the things he carried and the scant details in his travel documents. She wanted to see him bare, unadorned, laid open. She wanted the man in black to take off all his clothes to show her who he really was. She wanted a full-body cavity search, but she did not have the authority to make that demand. The next day, Chandani saw the man in black a third time at the end of a long queue of passengers at the entrance to the gate. When she looked up and stared at him, he smiled. 3 times in 3 days. Who was this man? How did he come back so quickly? Did he never leave to begin with, or on arriving at his destination, did he just turn around and take the first plane back to Singapore? She felt his eyes upon her. Crumbs, what did he see when he looked at her? She must appear to so plain in her regulation dark grey polyester cotton shirt, and she was conscious that her hips were wider than her shoulders, that her hair was held in place by a plastic hair clip from a $2 shop, that her belt was bulky and her handcuff pouch was crammed full of Mentos. By the time the man reached the screening station, the flight attendant announcing that elite class, the elderly and passengers with young children were invited to board. The man placed his phone in the tray and his bag on the metal rollers. She looked carefully at the shapes on her monitor. The display showed the outline of the papers, the dress and the lingerie, the same contents as the day before, and the day before that, nothing unusual. Chandani rose from her chair in front of the monitor and asked Mr. Tuan to inspect the bag. Mr. Tuan grunted, grabbed the bag and unzipped and emptied its contents on the metal table in front of him. The man walked through the archway. Mr. Tuan unwrapped the tissue paper and held the white lace camisole and panties up towards the sunlight streaming in through the terminal window. He asked the man, "Are these yours?" The man in black laughed. "No, they wouldn't fit." Chandani rose from her station, stood in front of him and said, "Who are you? What's with the woman's underwear?" The man smiled and leaned towards her so nobody else could hear. "It's for you, Chandani." At first, Chandani did not know what to do, and the man looked at her, waiting for her to say something. An announcement was made on the public address system for all remaining passengers to board the flight. The man said, "If you come with me, I'll help you leave. I'm here for you. Just say the word and I'll take you away from all of this." Afterwards, when she looked back on her life, she thought of that moment of inflection and temptation. She could so easily have followed the man. She imagined him producing a ticket and a boarding pass and holding her hand as they walked to the plane. They could have headed through the open door at the far end of the seated waiting area and down the air bridge and flown away. She even pictured someone running after them. It would be Hamid, telling her she could not go. Hamid refusing to be left behind, pleading to be taken along too, begging to participate in all her possibilities. But she did not want to be taken. Not by the man in black, and not by Hamid. And she did not want to stay. She wanted more than poetry, a summer breeze, and frilly knickers. The man in black turned, put his phone in his pocket, took his bag and made his way to the airline desk at the entrance to the passenger area. As she saw him move away, Chandani knew she could no longer pretend to look as though she cared. She left her monitor, picked up her backpack and said goodbye to Hamid. She left him wafting at the screening station while the man in black headed to the air bridge. She did not watch him depart. Chandani walked the wrong way through the metal detector archway, strode out of the gate and into one of Changi Airport's major pedestrian transit arteries. She stepped onto a travelator and let it carry her to the main area of Terminal 3, where she went landside through the staff exit and left the airport to go home and fix her life. Later, after Chandani arrived at home, she went straight to her room, undid her belt and removed her shirt. When she went to fold her trousers and hang them up in her closet, a scrap of paper fell to the floor as she opened it. It was a poem. Looking at objects and discerning the contents of the human heart, what meaning in the washed-out, transparent shape of things? Delusion laps at the shore, and we tell ourselves lies to stay in place. But then one day, an awakening and departure, found our own way. And that's the end of the story, The Looker. Thank you very much to the Speak Good English movement for supporting short stories in Singapore. Let's connect.